On Halloween night, alone in my grandmother's ancient home, the weight of its history pressed on me. The house, situated at the end of a dark, winding lane, had seen generations come and go. Its creaky wooden floors and dust-filled corners whispered tales of times gone by. Early in the evening, the neighborhood kids knocked in their playful costumes, giggling and asking for treats. The house became an island of warmth and light amid the shadows. But as the night wore on and the visits became less frequent, an oppressive silence took over. Then came an unsettling knock. Opening the door revealed a tall, gaunt man in a worn-out purple suit, a fraying fedora, and a mask concealing his face. His hollow eyes stared back at me from behind the mask. Instead of a cheerful candy bag, he clutched a grimy pillowcase. Unsettled, I hurriedly gave him candy. The silence as he stood there was palpable. The air seemed to grow colder. Eventually, I nudged the door closed, but his haunting image stayed with me. Hours later, I was jolted from my reverie by footsteps echoing from the lower floor. Panicked, I texted my childhood friend Mike, who was always curious about mysteries and had spent many summers exploring the old house with me. "Someone's in the house, can you come?" Mike's reply was swift. "Stay hidden, I'm on my way." The agonizing minutes felt like hours. Hiding in the old study, surrounded by dusty books and memories, I heard whispers echoing, mingling with the soft rustling of old photographs and documents being handled. Mike's text vibrated my phone. "I'm in. Stay quiet. We'll find him together." Guided by the dim moonlight, we tiptoed through the house, Mike leading the way. We followed the chilling signs, the kitchen window forced open, muddy footprints, and a trail of old family trinkets leading us towards the basement. At the door, we heard soft mutterings. Steeling ourselves, we descended. The basement, a testament to forgotten eras, was cluttered with old furniture shrouded in sheets, creating ghostly figures. One such silhouette seemed out of place. Mike, with a swift motion, unveiled the intruder. It was the man in the purple suit. His mask was off now, revealing deep, dark scars crisscrossing his face. A chilling tableau lay beside him. Our family's old photographs spread out, surrounded by his rusty tools and the pillowcase ominously stained. The man's deranged smile met our shocked expressions. "Your family history is fascinating," he croaked. A confrontation was inevitable. Amid the scuffle, an old lamp shattered, igniting a blaze. The basement became an inferno. We had the choice of confronting a madman or the flames. In the ensuing chaos, the blaze from the fallen lamp began consuming the walls and the heat became nearly unbearable. Flames crackled and the smoky atmosphere made it hard to see or breathe. In this claustrophobic inferno, we could barely make out the tall, gaunt figure lunging towards us. Mike and I, though overwhelmed with fear, leaned on our bond of brotherhood. We split, with Mike drawing the man's attention and me flanking from the side. The masked man was relentless. His deep scars seemed to give him an almost supernatural endurance, as if pain was an old friend. Mike swung a heavy antique candlestick holder at him, but the man ducked, letting out a guttural laugh that echoed hauntingly in the burning basement. I, in turn, grabbed a tarnished silver tray and attempted to pin him down, but he was surprisingly agile for his lanky frame. With each clash, memories of the house, of grandparents, of holidays, of whispered secrets, seemed to be going up in flames. Finally, a desperate move on Mike's part, where he pulled down a burning wooden beam, trapped the man temporarily. With combined strength, we managed to subdue him, tying him up with old moth-eaten curtains that somehow resisted the flames. Dragging him up the stairs was no easy feat. The flames had consumed much of the entrance and we barely made it out, choking on smoke and the weight of the intruder between us. Once outside, the cool night air was both a relief and a stark contrast to the hellish scene inside. Later, when investigators combed through the ruins and started piecing together the man's twisted intentions, the horrors we narrowly escaped became clearer. The man had a dark fascination with ancestral lineages, and through some deranged sense of purpose, sought to cleanse them. Inside the bloodied pillowcase were not just candies from other homes, but small trinkets, each one a piece of someone's family history. Most horrifying were the old tools, rusted but sharp. They told a story of their own, suggesting rituals of pain and bloodshed. The old house was gone, a mere memory, but its tales and the nightmare of that night continue to haunt us. Every Halloween, as children gleefully seek out candies, Mike and I share a look that speaks volumes. We can't help but wonder, how many houses had the man visited before ours? How many families' histories were interrupted or forever altered by his sinister touch? And chillingly, were there others like him out there, lurking in the shadows of All Hallows' Eve. Every year on December 21st, our town hosts the Winter Solstice Festival, a beacon of light during the darkest night. But for some, including me, the festival carries a sinister echo, a shadowy memory of a chilling event. One year, as the festival approached, I received an ornate invitation. Embossed in gold with the silhouettes of shadows and stars, it beckoned me to the abandoned Miller mansion. I'd always heard whispers about the mansion, with its tall turrets and ivy-clad walls. Most in the town believed it was haunted, having been abandoned ever since the mysterious disappearance of Annabelle Miller, the youngest of the family. Against my better judgment, driven by curiosity, I made my way to the mansion. There I was greeted by the warm glow of candlelight, the sound of hauntingly sweet music, and a room filled with people dressed in clothing from an era long past. The most striking among them was a woman in a 1920s flapper dress, her eyes sharp and mesmerizing. She introduced herself as Eleanor, and, with a smirk, claimed to be the caretaker of the mansion and the preserver of the Miller family's old traditions. The evening started pleasantly enough. The guests laughed, danced, and shared stories of days gone by. But as midnight neared, the atmosphere shifted. Eleanor announced the beginning of the true solstice ritual. To my horror, hooded figures brought forth a caged goat. The partygoers gathered around, their faces twisted in anticipation. What followed was grotesque. They slaughtered the animal, feasting on its flesh and drinking its blood in a perverse ceremony. Panicking, I tried to find an exit, but Eleanor blocked my path. "You were invited for a reason," she whispered menacingly. But before she could act, a gust of wind blew open the mansion doors. Through them, a ghostly figure appeared, a young girl, eyes hollow but familiar. It was Annabelle. The chilling air around Annabelle seemed to contrast the firelit warmth of the room. The fervor that had driven the party moments before now turned into sheer terror. Eleanor, the cult leader in her 1920s flapper attire, backed away, her face a mask of dread. The very people who had once partaken in Annabelle's sacrifice were now petrified at her presence. Their chanting and debauchery ceased instantly, replaced by gasps and murmurs of fear. To truly understand the dread that gripped the room, one must first know the tragic story of Annabelle. She was a bright-eyed young woman, eager to explore the world and dreamt of escaping the confines of her small town. She was beautiful, radiant, and full of life, making her the envy of many. But that all changed on a fateful evening in 1930. Rumors had been circulating about a secretive group in town, notorious for dabbling in the arcane arts and worshipping ancient malevolent forces. Eleanor, despite her appearance as a glamorous flapper, was at the heart of this dark syndicate. They were a cult known to perform unspeakable acts under the guise of witchcraft and dark rituals. One evening, lured by an invitation to an exclusive gathering, Annabelle attended what she believed to be an innocent party at Eleanor's mansion. It was only when she found herself surrounded by hooded figures, the stench of fresh blood in the air, and the haunting bleats of goats being led to slaughter, that she realized the grave danger she was in. The cult believed that by sacrificing a pure soul during the winter solstice, they would gain untold powers and immortality. The innocent Annabelle was chosen for this twisted ritual. The events of that night were so horrifying that even the most hardened criminals would blanch at the recollection. Annabelle's screams echoed through the mansion as they sacrificed her, her life force being offered to dark entities in exchange for their diabolical blessings. Once the deed was done, her body was never found, her existence erased, as if she'd never been. But townsfolk whispered tales of how her spirit would roam, seeking revenge. So when Annabelle appeared that night at the very place of her torment, the very sight of her brought the weight of guilt and terror to those present. Even Eleanor, the mastermind behind the sinister act, seemed powerless. Whispers ran like wildfire. Is it really her? How is she here? A glass dropped, shattering, its sound piercing the thick silence. Eleanor, her voice trembling, tried to assert control. It's a trick, a ruse, but her voice lacked conviction. As I looked closer, the apparition of Annabelle had a determined, almost vengeful look, her gaze fixed on Eleanor. The intensity of that gaze made it clear that she was here for a purpose. Seizing the opportunity, I began to edge towards the exit, trying to make my escape unnoticed. But just as I reached the door, a heart-stopping scream filled the air, a scream that was neither human nor animal, but something far more sinister. I didn't dare look back. When I finally made it back to town, sweat-soaked and heart-pounding, I attempted to relay my nightmarish experience. The townsfolk, while concerned, found it hard to believe. Many attributed my story to an overactive imagination, or the influence of the intoxicating festival spirits. However, to this day, during every winter solstice, I can't help but shutter my windows and bolt my doors, the memory of that haunting night never quite fading. And as the years go by, I can't shake off the feeling that somewhere out there, Annabelle's spirit still seeks vengeance for the unspeakable horrors she endured. It was a calm, chilly evening, and I found solace in the antique surroundings of my late grandmother's house. The creaks and groans of the old wooden beams were oddly comforting. The evening before Halloween, as the dusk settled, I heard the whispering rustles of leaves being disturbed outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then, a soft, childlike voice echoed, "Trick or treat." I peered through the window but saw no one. A bit rattled, I assumed it might have been kids playing a prank early. As night set in, I went about my usual routine but was interrupted by a series of soft, deliberate taps on the window. I approached cautiously, the dim light from the street lamp revealing a silhouette of someone in an old-fashioned plague doctor costume, complete with the beak-like mask. The figure held up an empty burlap sack, tilting its head as if expecting something. With a shaky voice, I called out, asking who they were. No response. Suddenly, the phone rang, jolting me. As I reached to answer, the figure outside seemed to have vanished. The call was just static, followed by the same childlike voice whispering, "Trick or treat." Panicked, I locked all the doors and windows, but the voice continued, now echoing from the old radio in the living room, the one that hadn't worked in years. The static-filled whispers seemed to get closer, as if moving towards me. Desperate for answers, I decided to go through my grandmother's journals, where she detailed peculiar incidents happening every Halloween. One entry stood out, a tale of a young boy who came to her door one Halloween night, dressed as a plague doctor. When she had no treats to offer, the boy vowed to return every year, seeking his trick. The realization hit me hard. The stories were true. The spirit of the boy, trapped in eternal disappointment, was now after me. The night passed with more disturbances, the flickering of lights, cold drafts, and haunting whispers. By dawn, everything became calm. On Halloween night, I decided to leave a bowl of candy with a note, for the boy who never got his treat. The evening was uneventful, the candy remained untouched. Just when I thought I was safe, a knock echoed from the attic, a place I had not ventured since moving in. Curiosity compelled me. Curious about the deeper history, I began searching through old family records and photos stored in a dusty corner of the attic. Among the stack, there was a faded newspaper clipping dated over a century ago. The headline read, "Local boy missing, last seen on Halloween." The black and white photograph featured a boy, perhaps no older than 10, wearing what appeared to be a homemade plague doctor outfit. The resemblance to the figure I had encountered was uncanny. Continuing my search, I stumbled upon my grandmother's personal diary, different from the journals I had read earlier. Its pages were filled with her struggles, secrets, and confessions. One entry detailed a Halloween from her youth. She had played a trick on a boy from the village, leading him into the woods as part of a dare, then leaving him there as night fell. The boy was never found, and the guilt haunted her ever since. As dusk approached, an unsettling feeling crept over me. The house felt colder, the shadows deeper. Whispers echoed through the hallways, but this time they weren't just saying trick or treat. They were beckoning me. Join me in the woods." Suddenly all the lights in the house went out. The only illumination came from the full moon outside, casting eerie shadows inside. In its silvery light I saw him, the plague doctor boy, standing at the end of the hallway. But he wasn't alone. Surrounding him were shadows of other children, all in old-fashioned Halloween costumes. Remembering the candy in the attic, I rushed upstairs. Perhaps this was my way out, a chance to appease the spirits. As I placed the candy in the burlap sack, I noticed a second note at the bottom, written in a child's handwriting. "I just wanted to play. Will you play with me?" Shivers ran down my spine. The temperature dropped further. Emerging from the attic, the spirits of the children floated around the house, their innocent faces marred by sorrow. The plague doctor boy approached me, holding out his sack, waiting for the candy. I gently placed it in. As I did, he whispered, "Thank you, but it's not enough." It's not. Panicking, I remembered the story of my grandmother leading the boy into the woods. Perhaps, I thought, if I retraced their steps, I could set his spirit free. Following the whispers, I ventured into the forest, feeling the presence of the spirits behind me. The woods seemed to close in, the trees resembling spectral figures. Deep inside, I found an old well, long forgotten. Around it lay scattered remnants of costumes from decades past. Understanding dawned upon me. The well was where the lost souls of the children were trapped. I took a deep breath, whispered an apology, and dropped the burlap sack into the well. Suddenly, the woods lit up with ethereal lights as spirits danced around, finally freed from their earthly chains. The plague doctor boy approached, his ghostly face now serene and mouthed a silent, "Thank you." Emerging from the woods, the haunting weight of the house felt lifted. However, the memories of that night lingered. Every Halloween, I'd leave a trail of candies from the house to the woods, ensuring no child would ever be lost again. But still, the mystery remains. Every year, in the dead of night, a single candy goes missing, a silent reminder of the tricks and treats of the past. In the shadows of the night, if our tales from unsettling horror stories gave you a fright, press like and let it be known. Subscribe, so you're never alone in this haunting journey, and share, so others too can be wary. Until our next sinister tale, stay dark, dear listener.